If you're thinking about hitting that wildcard button in game week 10, don't worry, I've got you covered with not only one team, not only two teams, but three different wildcard teams for you in today's video. So let's go and take a look. Now, of course, before we dive into today's video, if you do enjoy any of the content that you see on the channel, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, as we are on that road to 25,000 subscribers. We're going to be able to, I hope, do it before the end of the season, but it is only possible with your guys' amazing support. A little bit of a caveat with this video: the only time I have available to film is before all the games have kicked off. I've seen the team news, so obviously we know that Gabriel and Saka are ready for Arsenal. They're featuring this week, so we don't have to worry about them as potentially injury concerns. But of course, if there are any players that I do talk about that have picked up injuries, whether that be in the 2 o'clock game or of course in the 4:30 game as well, do of course just caveat that, and I'll put some replacements in the comments section if that is the case. But like I said, this is the only time unfortunately I do have available for me to film this. This is going to be my favorite wildcard team. This is very close to what I'm actually currently rocking myself right now. There's only two players that are a little bit different from mine. It is going to be Richards and it is going to be Mateta. Obviously, we're going to speak about them in depth in today's video. A lot of people are, of course, going to be looking to jump on Crystal Palace. But one of the big features I absolutely love and adore about my team right now, and one of the reasons that I would wildcard into something very similar, would be that midfield. And to be honest, all 7 attackers that you can see on the pitch right there have penalties. Well, obviously, Semenyo and Enzo, they're still a little bit up in the air. Same with Saka, a little bit kind of like maybe they might not. Maybe, you know, Gyökeres might take the next one if Kluivert's on the pitch. Of course, if Palmer's back. But for right now, I do feel like these guys are probably all going to be first choice penalty takers. One of the big things that I am trying to focus on this season is players with multiple avenues to points, whether that be defensive contributions, whether that be open play threat, whether that be set piece share, or whether that be, of course, those kind of, you know, illustrious penalties that we all love. But a lot of these players tick lots of those boxes and have multiple avenues to points. Like I said, they've all got it. And like I said, you've got here pretty much 7 potential penalty takers with this side. And it does just feel like a little bit of an OP strat to, of course, be going for. Let's take a look at the 11ify data with this team then, because I do think it really highlights it. Of course, we've gone with the double Arsenal defense, and every team you will see in today's video has the double Arsenal defense. Their projected numbers on the 11ify model, on the Solio model, just look absolutely unbelievable, by the way. So yeah, I think double Arsenal defense is definitely going to be the route. I would still like one of their attackers, whether that be, of course, Gyökeres if he performs today, or of course Bukayo Saka. I still would like that. I think maybe going for the triple up is a little bit of overkill, but with the projected numbers we're seeing right here, it is absolutely ridiculous, and definitely for me still worth obviously investing in. You can see as well we do have an Everton defender in Michael Keane. We'll see his CBIT numbers in a second. They aren't too far off, of course, what you can be expecting to go and get with a Tarkowski, and of course you are paying 1 million less for the privilege. As well in there, we are seeing Fulham with really good numbers, and I think if Joachim Andersen is declared fit and available, he would very much slot into this side, maybe potentially ahead of Michael Keane as well, with obviously the next 3 fixtures looking really good. You saw Chris Richards in there as well. Crystal Palace's fixtures are really great, and again, he's just one of those players that is just going to tick along very nicely, and has been doing exceptionally well with those defensive contributions. I've given Saka the armband for this team as well over Erling Haaland. As you can see, the projected goals on the left-hand side actually does have Arsenal slightly higher than, of course, Manchester City, and that is the only reason I've done it. Of course, we're probably going to all be still sat with Erling Haaland as our captain for the next few weeks. It's probably going to be the way it goes. I would like some Chelsea coverage as well. I know yesterday was a disappointing result against Sunderland. However, they still do have some great fixtures coming up. And I do think Enzo is still one of the best attackers you can go and pick up in the game right now for his price point. What, of course, he can offer with penalty appeal, corners, and, of course, his open play threat. An absolutely fantastic box-crashing midfielder. We're also seeing some pretty decent numbers for Palace. Of course, we're going to be looking at the likes of Mateta. We've got obviously some other Crystal Palace attackers we are going to be notifying you on in a second as well, but there are some great numbers coming up for Crystal Palace over that period. I wanted to touch on the defensive contributions as well with some of the defenders that we have, of course, selected. Senesi is in here. Obviously, we've got Richards, Anderson, who I spoke about, who will unfortunately miss out this week for Fulham, and as you can see down the bottom as well, Michael Keane as well. This is all provided by FPL Tom Hadley. You've probably heard him spoken about in a lot of of FPL YouTubers content this season because he is producing some absolutely incredible stuff. So make sure to go and head over to his Twitter, drop him a follow because, like I said, he's putting this stuff together every single week. And that is what I've tried to do with this defense. I've just tried to pick up those C-bit defenders that are absolutely smashing it out the park, and of course look to, you know, just invest into the Arsenal defence as well with their great projected numbers. That's kind of been the building blocks of our defence, and I do think it is a really, really good, strong overall team. We've got that C-bit players, we've got the players that can get the clean sheet, and like I said, the 7 attackers that all might have penalties or potentially other avenues to points as well. It does feel like a really, really smart and well-constructed attack. Let me know what you think of draft number 1. Does it tickle your pickle? Let me know in the comment section, and let's move on to draft number 2. Draft number 2 is pretty much the same draft, to be honest. There is just one change that I have made, and it is bringing Bryan Mbeumo in here ahead of Anton Semenyo. Someone in my video yesterday asked me, is it a viable strategy to potentially look at double Manchester United attack? Because, as I've been banging on about for a long period, if you got that Liverpool game out of the way, United have some absolutely cracking fixtures all the way up until game week 22. And obviously in yesterday's transfer targets video, we did speak about Manchester United players and obviously speak about my favourite ones I would of course be looking to go for. So I thought we'd obviously bring back up that slide again because I think these are realistically the 3 Manchester United players you are going to be considering, especially from an attacking perspective. Defensively, I probably wouldn't still go near it. This seems just to be too much kind of XG conceded, too many, you know, kind of errors in that back line that are leading to goals. So I probably would stay clear of that. However, the attackers, they're creating plenty of good underlying data, getting some big hauls as well, as we've seen already from Bruno Fernandes this year, and Mbeumo obviously yesterday with his brace. But I'm going to give you my breakdown on who I would be selecting as my top Manchester United midfielders. I still think for me, Bruno Fernandes is my favourite midfielder. He's just got so many avenues to points, and like I said, that is one of the big things I am focusing on this season. He's got the defensive contributions, as you can see. That's one of the main advantages he does have over the likes of Mbeumo and Cunha. He's already managed to pick up 6 defensive contribution points already so far this season. Has been very, very unlucky in 2 games as well, where he's managed to come away with 11. If he had obviously added them in, that would have been an additional 10 points to his total already, and that will of course add up as the season does progress. I know a lot of people are like, oh well, you're just buying Bruno for DEFCON, but if he continues to pick up those defensive contribution points, add some attacking returns in there as well, him and Mbeumo are going to be running very, very close in my personal opinion. But I think with Bruno, I'm still confident that he's going to be the penalty taker, has set piece share as well, and actually does have open play threat. He was massively dodging points yesterday against Brighton. 0.57 XGI for him in that game alone. Has the best XGI on this list as well, but of course 3 penalties will of course have skewed that a little bit. But when you are buying Bruno Fernandes, you know you're going to be getting that penalty share as well. The beautiful thing that I like about Manchester United and a lot of their players is they are going to see very, very good minutes within the Premier League because they're out of the Carabao Cup. They have no European football to worry about, so they're pretty much going to be playing full 90 minutes and just solely focused on the Premier League. That is one of the main appeal of course going with this double Manchester United kind of pivot in midfield. You've not got to worry about Europe, you've not got to worry about rotation, because I do expect to see Bryan and Bruno on that pitch every single game, or at least starting every single game for Manchester United. Cunha, there has been some early substitution, so probably for that reason I would look to of course sway away from him. But if I was to obviously pick between the 2 right now, I would edge towards Bruno Fernandes. Like I said, he's just got that kind of, multiple avenues to points. But if you're watching solely from an eye test perspective and you are just wanting someone that is definitely going to hit some big peaks this season and definitely catch your eye when you are watching football games, I do think Bryan Mbeumo looks like Manchester United's best player from an open play perspective. From a fantasy perspective, I still do think Bruno is the better pick in my personal opinion. However, with the good fixtures coming up, maybe that could change and maybe Bryan could just be a little bit of a beast. So I wanted to build a wildcard team that of course kind of had both of them in it, and I do think again it is a very good side. Obviously still has all the key points that I did raise with obviously the wildcard one. You pick out Semenyo as well, who maybe has been overperforming on his underlying data so far. There are some more difficult fixtures coming up for Bournemouth, as you can see, with Senesi and Kuprig on the bench as well, with Manchester City away. So there are some more difficult games coming up for them over the next few weeks, and maybe pivoting to a side that has very, very good fixtures could be potentially the play and cash in on your chips already with Semenyo and move to potentially a Bryan or a Bruno Fernandes. Let me know what you think of Wildcard 2, and let's head to our third and final wildcard team. Okay, so here is our third and final wildcard team. We have gone for a slightly different setup. We've moved away from the double Arsenal pivot, which I do think is probably going to be very strong defensively. However, the Bergen and Brighton do have a great set of fixtures coming up, and their most difficult fixtures in game week 16 and 18. That is thankfully where Dubravka has two home fixtures against Fulham and Everton. So of course that pairing and that rotation actually does work quite well for the next few weeks. And obviously when Brighton have their more difficult fixtures, you can very easily get out of them with Dubravka. The main appeal of this draft, I would say, of course, is going to be that triple Crystal Palace. They have a great set of fixtures coming up, and I think if I was looking to wildcard this week, Crystal Palace, of course, would be a team that I would be looking to heavily invest into. They've got some absolutely fantastic assets, and for me personally, I have their best free assets on screen right now. If Crystal Palace are going to score, I would probably say, I'd bet a lot of money that one of these guys would either be the goal scorer or the assister of the goal. These are the kind of the key talisman players you want to be looking for. I think Munoz obviously goes against what we've seen with a lot of the other defensive picks I've made, where it's clean sheets and of course it's going to be defensive contributions. His defensive contribution numbers haven't been bad so far this season, but it is those attacking returns that are pushing him up towards being one of the best scoring points defenders in the league, and I do think he is one of those players that can hit those massive peaks sometimes and definitely make himself worth that 5.6 million price tag. Whether or not he's going to be able to sustain those attacking returns ahead of some of the other defenders that will just keep picking up constant points through defensive contributions is a big argument to, of course, wait and see. However, if I had to pick probably between Tarkowski and Munoz over the next 5, I would really like to have Munoz in there ahead of, obviously, a DEFCON beast like Tarkowski. I just think the fixtures are there. I just think his attacking data is absolutely brilliant as well. One of the other picks I wanted to highlight here was going to be Danny Welbeck within the side. Scored, interestingly, the same amount of goals as Mateta before, obviously, Mateta does face off against Arsenal. 5 goals for him so far this season. 3 back-to-back 90-minute appearances. A wonderful goal against Manchester United this week. And he looks like he could be a real good asset at that 6.4 million price tag, There's some great fixtures coming up for him as well. Obviously, we spoke about it with the Bergens. So for 6.4, could be a very good asset for the next few weeks. Of course, then Thiago has interesting fixtures after game week 13 as well. He is the penalty taker for Brentford, so he could be, the switch that you do make there in a few game weeks' time. Get the best fixtures you can out of course, Danny Welbeck, who is doing very well. Again, no European football for Brighton, so you've not really got to worry about any rotation. If he was confirmed 100% going to be the penalty taker, I definitely would probably value him a little bit more highly than I do, but it's a little bit up in the air with Brighton as well. I think 3 or 4 players have already taken penalties so far this season, so it doesn't really look like it's going to be kind of, anybody's confirmed penalty while they are on the pitch. The thing obviously I wanted to highlight with this team is obviously it's going to be, triple Crystal Palace. The big talking point is going to be Jean-Philippe Mateta. You can see the fixtures here. They are just really good. They're very attackable. He's been obviously absolutely smashing it in terms of the goals and in terms of his underlying data as well. He's missed so many big chances. He could be genuinely up there for the golden boot right now if he could actually finish his dinner, but he does have penalties. The minutes so far have been very good, which of course is something I have been a little bit concerned about with him and Crystal Palace, but so far they've been good. They're heading into a decent run of fixtures here, and I really do think him and Haaland up front is going to be a very popular combination that a lot of people are of course going to be looking at. And of course, if you are in a wildcard this week and looking to keep, kind of similar track with people with transfers, I do think one of the most popular transfers this week is going to be João Pedro out and Mateta in. However, I do have some concerns with Crystal Palace and wanted to highlight it in the triple Crystal Palace team. This is their fixture schedule till January 2026. And what are you seeing here? You are seeing a hell of a lot of games coming up for Crystal Palace. Now, so far, they have managed to obviously stave off a lot of rotation within their side. It's been very much the same side in the Premier League every single week. I believe it's the back 5 have now played 9 consecutive games together so far this season, which is really good, suggesting obviously, Crystal Palace are now starting to see some rotation. But what you can see here is a hell of a lot of fixtures coming up for Crystal Palace. They are only midweeks off that they currently do have, and this very easily could change as well, depending on, of course, Carabao Cup football, is currently there is a midweek between game week I can't remember what game week it is, but after the Leeds game and the Tottenham game, you can see they've obviously got a break there. But of course, that is the week where Christmas falls on the Thursday. Their next midweek break after that Now, you might be saying to yourself, well, they've got the weekend off in between the Villa and Sunderland game. Nope, that is the FA Cup. They will be facing a fixture there. So their next one would be towards the back end of January, in between the 17th and the 24th. However, I do believe that if Crystal Palace were to make the semi-finals of the Carabao Cup, then that midweek would also be filled with fixtures. That is where my big concern lies currently with Crystal Palace, and people potentially going a little bit too heavy on them. As I've said there, their only breaks in terms of like a midweek off is either going to be the week where Christmas falls or up until mid-January. That is a lot of football that Crystal Palace are going to be playing with a very, very small squad. So I would just be a little bit cautious on maybe going for that triple up. I do think they've got some absolutely wonderful, fantastic assets with, of course, some great fixtures. But like I said, with European football this year and the Conference League, with, of course, them still being in the Carabao Cup, they've got a fixture this midweek as well. They're going to be playing a lot of football. Injuries are going to start racking up. Performances and fitness are going to drop as well. So that would be my, of course, big caution for those that are looking at a triple Palace on the wildcard. But again, I do think this wildcard draft looks ridiculously strong, and I would be very tempted with something like this. But of course, in the back of my mind, I do have to start thinking what that rotation is going to look like for Crystal Palace. And that goes for people on wildcard and, of course, looking at their transfers over the next few weeks. Let me know what you think of the wildcard teams down in the comment section. Any questions you got about your team as well, get them in, as we'll try to answer as many as we possibly can. But thank you for watching today, ladies and gentlemen, and good luck in game week 10.